You are listening to Renewed Day by Day with Pastor Ralph LaRosa. We'll continue the series called The Church in These Last Days. Yesterday, we learned about our number 2 statement of faith, what we believe about God. Today, Pastor Ralph will continue the topic, why we believe that God exists and how He prepared the heavens and the earth for life.
Now, imagine right now, all you have is a blob of water going through space. So God had to prepare the earth and the universe for life, for plants, for animals, and especially for humans. Okay? Now let's take a look at it. Exodus 20:11 says this, "For in 6 days," and this confirms Genesis 1 and 2, for especially Genesis 1 when it gives us the 6 days of creation, and Genesis 1:31 completes those 6 days, and then in Genesis 2, 1 through 4, it talks about the 7th day. Okay, here's a summary in Exodus chapter 20, verse 11. "For in 6 days," and he could have done it in 6 minutes or 6 seconds, but he chose to do it in 6 days and rest on the 7th. And I believe one of the reasons is the only place that we get a 7-day week. Okay, "For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens." He filled in the heaven. It was heaven in the beginning, now it's heavens. "And the earth, and the sea, and all that is in them." And then he rested, not because he was tired, but to give us a pattern. He rested on the 7th day. Now, what is very important for a lot of questions concerning God, the Bible, and why this and why that, this answers so many why questions. When God created the original creation, it was very good. There was no sin, there was no corruption, there was no fossils. Fossils are dead things. Okay, there were none of these things. There was none of these negative things that we experience in the world today. Okay, so let's talk about the summit or the peak or the highest purpose of creation. When you go to the summit of Mount Everest, it means you reach the top. And on day 6 is the summit of creation. Okay, we're not going to go through each day, but we could. It's very clear in Scripture. Okay, in Genesis 1:26, after preparing this planet we call Earth for mankind, for humankind, for Homo sapien, this is what God said. Now notice Genesis 1:26. This is not the full doctrine of the Trinity, but it gives us a hint. And it's the foundation and it's the beginning of the doctrine of the Trinity. "Then God said, let us," that's plural, "make man in our image," that's plural, "in our likeness, and let them," and we're going to see he's talking about man and woman, "rule over the earth," all of it, the plants, the animals, the birds, the fish, all of it. "Let him rule over all the earth and over all the creatures." And that's why we say this is the summit of creation, because he is ruler over all the creatures that God created. Now, the only creature that now he's not ruling over is angelic creatures, because God created them for a different purpose. They were to serve God and serve man and protect man until he was fully into eternity. Okay, let's look at Genesis 1:27, very important. Actually, evolution can't give you an answer where both male and female came from. How did a male evolve from and then distinguish from a female? So God created male and female. He created them. Now, Genesis chapter 2 is not a different creation. It is an expansion on day 6. It adds the details to the summit of creation. For example, in Genesis 2:7, on day 6, we know God created the man. And it says, God made man out of the dust of the ground. That's his body. and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. That's nashama. That means he became a living soul and spirit. That's the immaterial part of man. That's where God consciousness comes from. Okay, Genesis 2:7 tells us that. And then in Genesis 2:8 it tells us that God made a garden. We call it the Garden of Eden. And then in Genesis 2:16 and 17, listen carefully, even before the woman was created, barad, God gave the only prohibition. He proved that man had a choice. In Genesis 2:16 and 17, he said you can eat of every tree of the garden, but not of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God made it, and God can set up the rules, and that was his rule. And then in Genesis 2:18, it says it was not good for man to be alone. And so now we have the details of the creation of the woman, who was made as a helper, not a maid, but someone to be compatible, to complete, and to fulfill the man. Okay, so there we have the summit of creation. Now, listen carefully. Let's go back to our subject, which is what we believe about God. Why do I believe in the existence of God? Why do I believe in the God of the Bible? And there's many reasons, but let me give you a big one. And you can get any encyclopedia. I remember 10, 15 years ago, I had the brand new Encyclopedia Britannica, and they had the junior edition. It was so good, so simple, so clear. And I just looked up the word earth. And of course, this was written by people who may not believe in God. But when you look at it, there's no excuse. Okay, listen to it. I believe in God because of the fine tuning of heaven and earth, so human life, animal life, plant life, so we could live on this planet. Okay, first of all, the mass and size of the earth. If it was 10% bigger or 10% smaller, we could not survive. And then you look at the distance from the sun and the moon. If it was further, we would freeze to death. If it was closer, we would burn up. Okay? So just the right distance. And then the tilt of this planet on its axis, so it turns every 24 hours. It does a complete revolution or rotation, and then once a year it goes around the sun. But the tilt of the axis of the earth turns at just the right speed so we can stay on this planet, and it's tilted at 23 degrees. Listen to Psalm 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God. I believe in God because of the fine tuning of heaven and earth. I'm sorry. I do not have enough faith to believe that this happened by chance. Chance does not exist. Chance can't create anything. This happened because of a design that an intelligent, omnipotent, all-powerful creator created. Okay, let's take a look at part of the heavens. Let's look at this. The atmosphere, the troposphere, and the stratosphere. Okay, now the reason it says sphere is because it envelops the earth, and the earth is a circle. It's a sphere. Okay, let's look at it. In Psalms 19:1b, the same verse, the A says the heavens declare the glory of God. Now listen, the skies, okay, proclaim the work of his hands. And once again, this is the fine tuning of heaven and earth for life. Let's look at the troposphere, which is the lower part of the atmosphere. That's where we can see clouds. That's where we have weather changes. That's what meteorologists read so that they can predict the weather tomorrow and next week and next year and so on. And then you have the upper part of the atmosphere. I think the atmosphere is about 600 miles, if I can remember correctly. But imagine the stratosphere, which is the upper atmosphere. We have what is called part of it. It's 40 miles up. Okay, it's part of the stratosphere. And listen to this. Imagine Baguio is 1 mile up, and Mount Everest is, 4 or 5 miles. But imagine 40 miles up into the stratosphere, there's what we call the ozone layer. And the ozone layer envelops the whole Earth. And it's only 1/4 of an inch thick. But if that ozone layer did not exist, all of us would be burned, we would be blind, and we would be broiled. We would be broiled people without this ozone layer. And once again, I do not have enough faith. That would be blind faith to think that this happened by accident.
Thank you for listening to Renewed Day by Day with Pastor Ralph LaRosa. Tomorrow, he will continue with the church in these last days and our 8 statements of faith. Until then, God bless you and stay healthy.